Hello and welcome to Auto Shenanigans. How the devil are you? Have you had a good week? My name is John. Thank you very much for joining me for another exciting Great British Road journey. In the last episode, we were exploring the county of Warwickshire, having travelled from Shipston to Warwick. But it turns out the county is much larger than I thought, and we're still to explore the north of the county, which I didn't even know was part of Warwickshire. Our journey today then starts in Royal Leamington Spa and takes us through the county, going nowhere near Coventry, before eventually ending up in a place called Nuneaton. As always, to help navigate our way around, we'll be using my 1923 Michelin guidebook, period correct maps, and I don't know, we'll look at some stuff, won't we? We start in Royal Leamington Spa, which, as the name suggests, is a spa town. In the days of my guidebook, there were around 29,000 people living here, which means it was quite a busy place, and that makes sense because in the 18th and 19th century, the town saw rapid expansion with the popularisation of the town's water, which apparently had medicinal qualities, and I'm sure it was very similar to the miracle healing water found at St John Scorn's Holy Well in Buckinghamshire that we've looked at previously. My guidebook suggests that maybe we'd like to visit Leamington's pump room. It's a lovely building that was constructed in the early 1800s to house a fancy swimming pool or a spa bath, its waters, of course, being Leamington's famous medicinal water. It was immensely popular until it wasn't, and by the 1920s and the days of my guidebook, despite several being built, the pump room was the only remaining spa bath in the town, which today has been converted into an art gallery and a tourist information centre. Interestingly, there is something special about the water in Leamington, but not in the way that they first thought. Analysis of the special medicinal water in the early 1900s revealed that it had an extraordinarily high salt content, and it's thought that in prehistoric times this whole area would have been underwater in the middle of an inland sea. Setting sail across the seas of Warwickshire, or the A425, we'll follow this road which will take us to our next destination. Looking at our old maps, not much has changed on this road. Which is an absolute lie. Just before the village of Southam, a short section of the A425 has been rerouted, and it's been done so recently it doesn't show as completed on any aerial photos. But what could possibly be causing this? HS2, and I'm in some woods that have managed to escape destruction a short distance from the A425. It's a woodland known as Long Itchington Woods, and it sits right on the route of the HS2 railway. But these woods are a site of special scientific interest and a sacred ancient woodland that cannot be harmed, so beneath my feet, probably some metres down, is a 1 mile long two-bore railway tunnel that was completed in 2023, and it will allow trains to speed you along to Birmingham. Or better yet, Southam, but there's no railway station here. Southam is a small market town that 100 years ago had 1,800 residents. Today it's at around 8,000, but we're still dealing with a fairly small town. Despite this, the town is home to a few large industries. For example, software developers Codemasters are based here. They were the largest privately owned software company before being bought out by EA Games in 2021. On the north side of the town, we find a massive quarry. Until 2011, there was a cement works on the site that had been set up in 1854. At its peak, it employed over 1,000 people, which would have been most of the people living in Southam. Today it's owned by Cemex and they continue to operate the quarry, and it's where they decided to set up their National Technical Centre, a place where they research and develop new building materials. Next we're going to head towards Rugby, and to get there we'll need the A426. Like the A425, this road hasn't really changed all that much over the years, but unlike the A425, HS2 isn't coming this way. However, looking at our old maps, there does appear to be a significant change since the old days, and I thought we'd take a closer look. This is Draycote Water. It caught my eye simply because in the days of my guidebook it didn't exist. It used to be just open fields and farmland, but in the 1960s a reservoir was constructed to meet the increasing water demands of Warwickshire. It covers an area of around 590 acres and it can hold 5 billion litres of water. However, because the reservoir doesn't have a natural water inlet, the water has to be pumped into the reservoir from the nearby River Lem or from Stanford Reservoir, which is found across the county line in Northamptonshire. Just up the road from Draycote Water is the town of Rugby. In the 1920s, a significant town with a population of around 25,000, and looking at our old maps possibly reveals a reason as to why. Rugby was a railway town with several railways converging at one central point, Rugby, and with that came the electrical and engineering industry. One such organisation was British Thomson Houston, or BTH. They began in 1894 and by 1900 were producing things like electric motors and steam generators in a massive engineering works based here in Rugby. Most of the engineering works has now been redeveloped or demolished, but one or two of the original buildings still remain in use today. Interestingly, when we visited Lutterworth earlier in the series, we discussed how it was home to Frank Whittle's jet engine, but it turns out the first prototype was built here at the Rugby Engineering Works before a falling out meant Whittle moving down to Lutterworth, where the jet engine's development would continue. Oh yeah, and apparently Rugby is the birthplace of the game rugby, but it turns out there's no evidence to support that theory. Our next destination is the town of Nuneaton, and to get there we've actually got a choice. We could go the simple way and use the A5. It's a Roman road, so it definitely existed in the days of my guidebook, but so did the country lanes, taking us along a more complex route via the B4112. Follow that road along and you'll eventually reach the M6 motorway, where we find the site of Harbour Magna Services. It's a motorway service station that was planned but never built, and it's not the first time that we've looked at it on the channel, but we were literally passing right by it and I couldn't resist making a little stop. If you're passing this way on the motorway, keep an eye out for the ghost slip roads that lead off the motorway. These would have been where you would have entered or exited the service station. After some driving enjoyment through the back roads that I definitely couldn't film, we arrive in Nuneaton, the largest town in Warwickshire, with a population of around 89,000. You'd have thought Warwick would be the largest town in Warwickshire, but clearly not, and it seems that Nuneaton has been the largest town in the county pretty much since records began. But why is this? Most likely because of the coal industry, which has been traced in Nuneaton as far back as the 1300s, and that's probably because this part of Warwickshire is a massive coalfield. I've come to Dormill Colliery, a short distance from Nuneaton, to look at what's left of the largest coal producer in England. Admittedly, it didn't exist in the days of my guidebook. It opened in the 1950s, but I'm a sucker for leftover large industry sites, so here we are. In 2008, Dormill would set the record for the most amount of coal excavated in a single year at 3.25 million tonnes. In 2013, the site closed following a mysterious fire that broke out underground. It was described as a major event, and apparently it was the worst underground fire for 30 years. Of course, the fire damaged large sections of the mine to the point where the decision was made to close the site for good. As for why the fire started, well, nobody really knows, but a year earlier, the site owners announced that they were potentially looking to close the site as part of a company restructuring, only to then be forced to close the site because of a fire. And there we are then, guys. That's all we've got time for this week. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you liked the video. If you did, there is of course a button specifically for that, and if you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. That'd be wicked sweet awesome. Enjoy the rest of your week, whatever it is you get up to. My name's John. You've been watching Auto Shenanigans, and I'll see you guys next time for another exciting Great British Road Journey. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.